Payroll Setup. There are 4 sections in MaxxTraxx to set up payroll information before you run your first set of paychecks. The first area is state tax rates and company payroll, then payroll withholdings in the default account posting section, then each employee's withholding amounts in their employee record, and finally, the beginning payroll records if you're starting to use payroll any day other than the 1st of January. Let's look at the company payroll section first. From the menu bar, click on Setups and select Accounting and Payroll, then Company Payroll from this side drop list. These entries up here are for reference only, when overtime starts, etc. And these 2 are custom features and aren't used very often. Here is where you would enter your state unemployment tax rate, or SUTA. This tax is usually paid by the employer based on employee wages. There are some states that tax the employee as well for a portion of the SUTA. And in these cases, a custom payroll deduction would be created, as this SUTA field is for the employer portion only. There is a limit to the amount of wages that this percentage is applied to, and that limit is set in the background of MaxxTraxx, depending on the state selected in the employee record. Most states have a SUTA limit that is the same as FUTA, the federal unemployment tax of $7,000 in wages, but some states have a much higher rate, like Washington, for example. Again, those limits are managed in the background and are updated automatically in the background whenever new tax tables are published by Scott Systems. This field is for state disability insurance rate, or SDI, and only some states have this tax, which is paid by the employee. There is a limit as well to the amount of wages this percentage is applied to, but is again managed in the background. Your state may have additional employer-paid or employee-paid taxes, so those custom payroll deductions are created here from the Add Payroll Item button. Click the Add Payroll Item button here, and this starts the wizard to create that deduction, and then just follow the steps in the wizard. First, you can create a new deduction or employee tax, or select a predefined one below. We'll create a new employee tax and click Next. Our example will be for employment training tax paid by the employer or company, and click Next. This is where we enter the name of the tax and a code that we'll reference. And Next. Select the accounts where we will accrue the taxes to be paid to the state, and the expense account that we disperse that tax expense to, since this is an employer-paid tax. And Next. Here we select if the tax rate is calculated based on gross pay after tax, or hours. And if it is based on hours, we can select which hours are used to calculate the base. I'll just select gross pay and Next. Enter any allowances that are deducted from the base pay the tax is calculated on, if any. Employment training tax in California does not have any allowances, so we'll click Next. And finally, enter the tax rate as a percentage or dollar amount if based on hours. And if there's a limit, as in California the limit is $7,000 of wages that this tax is based on, we would calculate that rate as 7,000 times 0.1% or times 0.001, and my limit here would be $7. And Finish. Remember to select this employer-paid tax here, and if this tax was an employee-paid tax, this custom payroll deduction would be selected in the employee record. We'll look at that in a little bit. Click OK, and now let's look at the default postings for your payroll deductions. Click Setups on the menu bar, Accounting and Payroll, and Default Account Posting. Under Transaction category on the left, we have payroll wages and the default accounts they flow into on the general ledger. We have a few user definable for other types of wages, and the accounts these wages flow into on the general ledger are customizable along with the descriptions. These payroll deductions are preset as well, they go into specific general ledger accounts. But here, these user-definable payroll deductions are the ones we can change around a bit to fit our deductions like health insurance, AFLAC, and the 4 cafeteria plans, which are pre-taxed. Then we have after-tax deductions like child support, garnishment, after-tax AFLAC plans. Just highlight and click the Edit button, or just double-click, and then you can edit the title and the account the withholding will accrue in. I would keep the first part of the label, like CAF 1 for example, for my health insurance deduction, so they stay in order on this screen to match the employee setup section, and you know if it's a pre-tax cafeteria plan. Click OK and make any other changes you'd like to on this screen. And close. Step 2 is complete. On to the employee records. Click Payroll from the menu bar and Employee List, and highlight and click the Edit button, or just double click on the employee name. And first thing, there needs to be both a state and the country selected for the state and federal tax tables to be activated. Note again that these tax tables are also updated automatically in the background at the end of the year and mid-year as well if there are changes like we had in 2010. Click the payroll link on the left, and here is where we select the pay period frequency, the method of payment, hourly, salary, or commission, or a combination of the two. And hourly employees can use the time card to auto-populate the payroll section with their time card hours in MaxxTraxx. Note salary employees' pay is their annual amount, and then the system will figure their gross pay per period depending on the pay frequency that you selected above. Down here we select allowances as well as the tax tables for state and federal. Note some states use this state field to activate SUTA only, like Washington, since they don't have state income tax in Washington. So a state setting still needs to be selected here. And this is where we can enter an additional tax withholding for federal or state. Next, click Payroll Items on the left. And here is where a custom payroll deduction, like the employment training tax we created for the employer, this is where those employee paid taxes would be selected. Next is default amounts on the left. And here is where we select those default deductions for things like health insurance, dental insurance, the wage garnishments and savings plans. These are just default amounts, and any of these amounts can be overridden when you're actually writing the paychecks. And last is commissions. For those commission employees, you can either pay a flat rate, actual hours, or flagged hours. And actual hours and flagged hours are tracked using the job clock feature, which is activated from the miscellaneous link, by the way. The hourly commission rate is entered here, or you can leave this setting at none and pay your technicians or service writers a commission on gross sales or net sales. And the base amount is the amount of sales that they're not paid commission on. And last, benefits. These vacation and sick hours will print on the pay stub if there are amounts entered here, but they're not automated at all, so these are manual entries. Click OK, and if this is the first paycheck of the calendar year, you're ready to go. However, if it's not, you must enter the beginning payroll records for 3 reasons. 1, for the year-to-date numbers on the employee pay stubs to be correct. 2, for tax calculations with wage limits such as FUTA. And 3, for the payroll tax reports like the 941 report to be correct. So let's take a look at the last step. Click Setups from the menu bar and select Accounting and Payroll and enter Beginning Payroll Records. Click the Add button to choose an employee to enter their payroll records, and I recommend entering your payroll records 1 quarter per employee at a time for the 941 report to generate correctly. For example, we're in August, so I would do 1 entry for the first quarter dated 3/31, and then a second entry for the second quarter dated 6/30, and then one more through the last pay period for the third quarter to date. Some people enter the entire year to date in one entry, and that's okay if the 941 report is not that important to you. And I've had people enter each individual paycheck. These fields are not meant to be edited after running your first payroll unless there was a major error found later on. However, until you run that first paycheck, you can come back and edit your entries as needed. And click OK and close. Once this last piece is completed, you're ready to run payroll. And this concludes the lesson on payroll setup.